going to demonstrate back stitch now. Another simple stitch, but again one that can be used really effectively, and I've got a couple of variations as well to show you. So again on this pear project, and I'm going to work down these 2 rows here and show you a back stitch and then a variation. So it's right at the end of that line there, and a little forward stitch. Now if you've done the running stitch, seen the running stitch video, it's the same start as that. So a little forward stitch there, but instead of leaving a gap like we did for the running, which you can see here, I'm going to come up ahead of myself now and I'm going to go back, hence back stitch. These need to be the same length if you can, so try and be accurate with that length of stitch there. And I'm going back into the end of the previous stitch. As I come out into the shape, you'll be able to see that a little bit more clearly. Straight up with the needle on the line. Just going to come a bit further away with that, trying to get them the same length. So, and then going back to that previous stitch, it's the end of the previous stitch, they share the same hole. Needle straight back down. You'll see that line of stitches start to show. Just get that knot out of the way. So ahead of myself, see that needle there, and back towards the end of that previous stitch, down the same hole, they share the hole, and that's my back stitch, going back on myself each time. So up ahead of myself, a little back stitch, up ahead of myself, back stitch. Don't make your stitches too long, get them nice even length. Making a nice solid line with this. So the running stitch is a broken line and the back stitch gives you a solid line. Straight up with that needle, no fancy angles for this. Got a starting stitch there from the previous stitch, don't worry about that, I'm just going straight over that. Just that last part there, come up on the end there, back stitch into that previous one. So it's a simple straightforward back stitch. I'm going to work the same stitch across the top here now and then show you another variation of the back stitch. So a little forward stitch there, then come up ahead of yourself, come back into that previous stitch. I'm just at the end of this row now, and just 2 more stitches in there I think to finish that off. Last back stitch there. And what I'm going to do with this top back stitch now is I'm going to whip my thread around it. So I did a version of this in the running stitch as well, but you can also do it in the back stitch. Give you a slightly different effect because we've got more stitches now than we have in the running stitch. So using a contrasting colour, and I'm going to slide that underneath the first stitch back towards me underneath the second stitch. Back towards me, so I'm going underneath the same way each time. I'm just whipping that thread around the back stitch using a tapestry needle, so that's got a blunt end, so I'm not catching that thread when I go underneath. You can see that colour wrapping around there. A little more dense than with a running stitch because, as I said, you've got twice as many stitches now. So a little bit more of a solid line. If you want something a bit more solid, then whip the back stitch rather than a running stitch. At the end, nice even tension on those. Going right to the end, and then to finish off, just take the needle down at the end of the back stitch, like so. So there you have a normal back stitch and a whipped back stitch. You can also do a woven back stitch. You might want to check out the running stitch video for the woven. Because it's a little bit smaller, it makes it a bit more compact, but you can still do that with this stitch. And you can also check out my other video, Pekingese stitch, which will give you another variation of the back stitch.